Okay, let's see if this actually works tonight. I am going to check quickly to see if this is on my phone and happening because as I learn StreamYard, I realize I don't know anything about what I'm doing, which is, fair. And this was supposed to happen last Sunday before New Year's. Okay, looks like we are up. All right, I don't expect anybody to show up, but we're going to pretend like people are. My name is Sarah Marks. I am a multi genre author, primarily chick lit, rom com, and horror and fantasy. I have many chick lit and rom com books out. We'll discuss that another day. The horror books, there are three, two in a series and one story collection. But tonight we're talking about my fantasy series. It's a big deal. I've been working on this series for over 20 years, but I wrote the first draft of what will be the first book in 2004 for my very first NaNoWriMo. And it's really a product of what I where I was mentally and in some cases physically. When I went to edit it after I started doing self-publishing, I realized that it was not going to be something I could use. There was no real story, no arc. It was just an introduction to the universe. And I thought I might treat it like short stories and just let people read chunks of it. And that really wasn't working for me either. This NaNoWriMo, I attempted what I'm affectionately calling draft 667 because the previous year, 2020, I tried draft 666. I have not written this that many times. It was just fun because this is Death's story. And the idea of making it number 666 and 667 just tickled me. So what is this book? This book is the story of hiring a new devil. In this universe, the devil is not evil. He's not a fallen angel. He's not actually a he is a she. She and Death run hell, Patala, the afterlife, whatever you want to call it from your culture. It is not punishment, it is not reward, it simply is. And it's maintained by magic. And depending on how many people are there, and that's a story that I'm not going to get into tonight, depending on how many people are living there, which only grows, does not diminish, it taxes the magical ability of the reigning devil. Death's magic is different, but the devil's magic is her own, and she is not dead, so she is using her magic. And the latest one, the current one at the beginning of the story, is at the end. She has exhausted herself magically and she comes to Death ready to retire. And he forms a search committee thinking he has to be less totalitarian, less dictator about who runs this place and more community focused, socialist. It doesn't work because you have people from history, people who had power in history and want to keep it, but you also have people from smaller, less well known places or families who are looking to claim power. So it goes wrong because it takes forever. And eventually, Death does have to intervene and just pick someone. And he picks incorrectly. He bows to pressure, and the pick from the final selection, she is wrong. She does a lot of damage. So then he has to, once he recognizes that, intervene again and hire yet another one. This one being the right one for now. There's more going on than I'm going to tell you because spoilers. So what am I doing? I wrote this in NaNoWriMo this year. I actually, back in August, I sat down, replotted the whole thing, realized, I mean, it could work as short stories, but really it would work much better if it was Death's part. Um, his arc is going from being apathetic and depressed to being engaged and trying to break a curse and trying to move things forward instead of just keeping things as the status quo. So this is his journey to that and picking the right partner to do that with. I wrote it in November. I won NaNoWriMo. It was wonderful, but I was also in California. And December was primarily a recovery month, as I think most of my Decembers ultimately end up being, because NaNoWriMo is so exhausting. And it is my primary writing event for the year. Everything else tends to be little bits and pieces or edits or something slightly different. So what I'm doing is now I want to edit this. I have a month to get this ready for my first editor. She will be doing a story edit because this is my original idea. It has been a 20-year journey. I really want this to have a second set of eyes before I start doing things like beta readers and talking to people about what works and what doesn't from a reader's point of view. I need an editor to give me changes so that I can make them. And then we can talk to beta readers and do line edits and things like that. Things that I would normally take the second draft on my own time and get it out to readers for my Austen books. This needs an extra layer of editing. And I have until February 1st to do this. And it is January 2nd right now. There is some work that has to be done. We'll talk about what I'm working on tonight in a moment. But what I did this time for NaNoWriMo was I didn't write a linear story. I wrote really what came to me, what I felt passionate about, and I'll get to why in a moment. But it's chunks. So those chunks have to be reorganized and put together and taken out and put in new places. And filler has to be added to some of this to connect us to what's going on, to fill in gaps that the reader might not know because, you're not in my head listening to the story as I think about it. So there's got to be a lot of connective tissue. And also, I wrote part of this when I was in Disneyland at the end of November and the beginning of December. And here's why that's important. Disneyland's important because hell, this afterlife is not what any religion is expecting. A few get close, but for the most part, nobody's gotten it right. So they need to orient people. They need to onboard people. And to do that, they have created a ride that helps people relax. But as the devil's magic thins and weakens, the ride gets a little not pleasant. So think in terms of they want it to be a calming ride, but it's more like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. If you ever rode on that, either because you happened to get lucky on the East Coast and saw it at Disney World when you were a child, or you frequently go to the West Coast park and you've interacted with it that way. The thing about Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is not a children's ride, but parents continuously take their children on it, and you can watch children just have a meltdown as they get off the ride. And it's fascinating, and I love it in that twisted way that I love these kind of things. But what ultimately, as I was in the park, I realized this is the broken version of the ride, a misguided version of the ride. There are other versions that will happen, and I wrote a sort of middle version that was really a hyper efficient ride that obviously does not work either. And then I wrote the final version of the ride, which was what I had always hoped the ride would be like in my very early drafts, and that is Small World. A little creepy, but not as scary as Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, but really designed to be welcoming and joyful instead of a black light devil judge sentencing you to death, which is Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But as I was flying home and thinking about how the draft had ended, I realized there was something happening at that middle ride that I wasn't connecting with. And it would be fun for readers to get a full sense of the ride in each phase of it. And I took some video on my phone of both Mr. Toad's Wild Ride and the Haunted Mansion. And as I watched the Haunted Mansion videos again, I thought, if you had a hyper efficient version of the Haunted Mansion, which it is one of the most efficient rides they have, like it moves fast when it's working beautifully. but it's a little scarier. And if you do that hyper efficiently, you could enhance the fear because you're not giving viewers and writers a chance to take in anything. So that's the new middle version of the ride. But I have to write that specifically. I can't just edit what I wrote because I'm changing point of views. The 3 rides are told in second person point of view because Death is talking to you. Death routinely breaks the fourth wall because he is Death. He can do whatever he wants. So the book is opening with him telling you what you would experience if you are on the ride. Like if you suddenly wake up, this is what you're seeing. This is what's going on. This is creepy. This is me. This is you. This is some kids. And then in the second version of the ride, it was just Death narrating, third person. And in the final version of the ride, we were back to second person Death. And I realized that that middle version has to be second person. So before the new year, I did a little work, started drafting that. And for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to work on I'm going to continue that work. That's just going to be what I work on today. After that, throughout the week on evenings, I'm not going to live stream it till next Sunday, when we'll see what I'm working on then. Um, but after that, I can start putting things together. I have taken one of my dry erase boards in the house, and you can't see it because I'm looking at it. It's on the other side of my computer. And I'm breaking down the 3 act structure, 2 halves of it, the A side of it and the B plot, just to see where I want things to go, where the middle point has to be, where it fits within my original version of this outline, because things have adjusted. I don't plot very often. I kind of do a little bit of both. That's why I call myself a plantster. I plan with a little bit of plot, but I really just fly by the seat of my pants. So planner, pantser, plantser. So I think one of the big things I'm going to be doing after I finish this version of the ride is taking that 3 act structure, printing up what I have, seeing where it all fits together and in what act these things should go into. And then I can get a sense of what comes next. And I have a few weeks to do this. So it should be very exciting as I move forward because I would like this book to come out in September. And this is the quickest I've ever moved from what is technically the first draft to the final draft. But because this book has been in development so long, it's a little different than that. So tonight I'm going to work in 10-minute increments and then I'll come back and talk about what I've done. If anybody's here, fantastic. If not, that's life, isn't it? I'm just going to have to keep doing this till people come and engage a little. But I did not promote tonight. So it is quite possible that I simply didn't let anyone know I was going to do this, and I'm going to have a quiet night of just me writing. So let's share my screen. Oh, okay, that might not happen because I have not given Chrome permission to share my screen, which I thought I had. Huh. So I'm going to mute while I figure this out, but also take myself off. All right, who knows why it is doing what it is doing, but I have reconsidered my options and we're going to work from a Google Doc version of what I wrote. I just pasted it in. So you can see in one window, this is Joan's version of the ride. Joan is the first hired devil. Uh, she would technically be the third devil in that there was one, then there was the second who is our devil when opening the book, and then Joan is our third. Joan is creating our hyper efficient version of the ride, and this is the one again based on Haunted Mansion. There is a bit of a song that goes with the ride, and it's going to be something that is in all the versions of the ride because I don't have the energy to think of another version of the ride song, and it's supposed to be sort of inane the way Small World is inane, which means I can just write the dumbest song possible. And as long as it has a cute little tune, we're great. And you can see this was, and I wrote this, I'm going to be honest, I was writing this at like the middle of the night. My friend Emily was visiting. So it, it was not great because I was literally laying in bed as I wrote. But this is just the draft of it. I'm not looking back at what I wrote previously for this version of the ride. I'm simply going forward with what I remember of Haunted Mansion. And I have my phone with me so that I can review the videos of Haunted Mansion. Um, and if people are nice to me, I will share that video if it looks good at all off my phone because the car is constantly moving. You're not always going to see things as clearly as I might want them to be seen because I recorded it on my phone for myself. But we are picking up down here, and this is um, when you're on the Haunted Mansion. You know, you have if you've never ridden the Haunted Mansion before, I'm sorry, it's probably the best non roller coaster ride at any Disney park. It is, and it's different between Disneyland and Disney World in the US. Um, in California, it is a New Orleans mansion, and and you come into a very large room with a bunch of people, and they close the doors behind you, and all of a sudden the room starts to descend, and the walls get longer, and portraits at the beginning of you walking in suddenly change as the wall gets longer and longer and you descend in this elevator. Then you exit into the next version of the line queue, which should typically be significantly shorter because this is where you're getting on the cars and you're making quick progress. That being said, if the cars and the whole ride stops working, which it does far more frequently than I think Disney would like, but if it doesn't actually break down when you are riding it, you are quickly moving through that queue and getting on those rides at one or two people. And they look like they're designed to look like coffins at both parks. And then you are proper on the ride and the ride progresses. So, what I'm going to do for the next 10 minutes till about 7:40 is right the end of the queue. I think we're getting on the ride and we're on the first few moments of the ride. So I will be looking at my video and then looking at my what I'm typing. So I'm gonna put myself on mute. Um, and maybe next time, if I can get this on my phone and get the sharing to work, we will actually be able to see all of what I actually wrote, or I'll just put it up on YouTube or Instagram or something. All right. So I wrote some of the ride. Um, one of the things that well, there's two things that I got to write in this ride, part of the ride. One is that um, we have uh, the person riding the ride is recognizing that while there is narration going on, there is also a song playing. So these two things are happening. But because the ride is moving so quickly and the volume of the song is so loud, he or she or you can't make out the words being narrated. And as I was watching the video of the Haunted Mansion ride, which in Disneyland is now, well, probably not anymore or being changed as we speak, but between Halloween and Christmas, it is the Nightmare Before Christmas version of the ride, which means that everything is changed out and themed to those characters and that song, and those vocal actors are back and used. So it's fun, especially if you love A Nightmare Before Christmas. But I'm listening to the audio and I'm realizing I hear the music, I hear the song, but I hear a voice that I cannot make out the details of. And I'm sure I can find it, and other people have possibly captured it better, but I have not. So I am going to go with that because this ride is not supposed to be fun and easy and understandable. It's supposed to be a hot mess. It's supposed to be the first sign to death that he might have made a mistake in who he selected or who he allowed himself to be convinced to select as the devil. So, second room. So the room that they are in when I started writing, it doesn't matter because the person who is being narrated to is focused on the audio that they're not hearing, and then they get into a room where they're seeing sort of this miniature version of the ride they are on, but it's not the ride itself. It's just people in a queue and then people leaving out all the details of the ride that they are on, which is surreal to watch these little figures. But as the figures come out off the ride, they jump for joy and they're in this grassy green field. And then the corner turns of the ride, because there's a lot of corners turning in every ride in Disney. It has to like wrap on itself so that they can maximize the space that they have, especially in California. So it turns a corner and the little figures turn a corner with you, and you're in a room where at the other end of the room is this gigantic woman in a bright red sparkly dress. You're going to pass through her dress to get into the other room, and very little is happening. There is narration, and the first version of the ride highlights that narration. And I probably will copy and paste it in clips so that like the person's like hearing that word or hearing something like this. And then they get into uh, the room that follows is what I call crossing the bridge. And the idea in hell is that this is a pocket dimension that everybody goes through. A certain people who aren't members of a certain bloodline are allowed to cross over into whatever comes next, and that is like a curtain that reminds people of the aurora borealis. So that is what they've represented in this room. But the problem is, at this point, everybody in this afterlife is pretty much from this bloodline. This is an ancient bloodline. They're cursed. They can't move on, and it's gotten to the point where it's only getting worse. There's more and more, and fewer people can pass on. So they go over this bridge. There is a troll. He asks you riddles. It's super fun. And if you can answer the riddle, and you're given a riddle you can answer, then you move on, and yay. And if not, you're sent back until you're able to move on. And you'll never be given if you can't move on, you're never going to be able to get to answer the riddle you've been given. So the ride is showing people that literally takes them over the bridge through the aurora borealis and into a pitch black room. None of these people will ever get to do that if things do not change in the real world, in our world, if you will. But Joan has still insisted on putting this, or Joan or Gilbert Northinger, who is from the Northanger Parks Austin book, sort of. he's dead by that point because this actually takes place about 1994 through 96 ish. So he's well dead, but that is the same Northanger family. So he is essentially Walt Disney because I had to make my own theme park because that's how that works. Um, but what it allowed me to do is somebody has decided we still need to feature this element in this ride, even though none of these people are going to be able to do it. And then they come into a pitch black room. The song is still playing. The audio is still going. You can smell that evaporated water of a smoke machine, and you get the sense that there is somebody sitting next to you, but there is nobody because there is no ghosts. You are in the afterlife. Everybody is there. But it is that hair on the back of your neck, if you literally had hair on the back of your neck at that point, which you don't. Um, but it's meant to mimic sort of that scene in the haunted mansion where you are turned to face mirrors that show somebody sitting next to you or somebody superimposed over one of you in on the ride. And I haven't figured out how exactly I'm going to get there yet, but um, it is intended to be comforting here rather than haunting. So it's supposed to be somebody from your family. And because this ride is rushed, that's it. It's going to end. But that person will be waiting for you at the other end. You are not seeing their spectral spirit. You're seeing them. They are coming to meet you. They will take you to wherever you have been invited to go in your afterlife. Um, so it's a very short version of this ride. But again, Joan's trying to be super efficient. So what I'm going to do is write that part. All right. So this is the end of that section. You are exiting with the person you love, whoever they are, and you aren't sure what to do, but you get to comment that you have no idea what's going on, and they roll their eyes because they've all been through all of this. They've been through different versions of orientation over the centuries and millennia, but this is clearly the one that annoys them all the most. And that is the end of the ride with the animatronic sort of jerky motion, hello, and tinny voice of it welcoming you, which is super creepy. And nothing in Disney is that creepy. Not even the Small World dolls, which are plenty creepy. This is the middle version of the ride. From here, we will deal with Joan being the worst, and the realization that he needs to hire somebody new. But this will come very close. That this will be a little before the midpoint. The midpoint is Death realizing that this is a hot mess and he needs to reclaim his position as the CEO of this community. It's his decision who gets hired. And next week I'll probably be working on putting all of that together. His descent into, oh my god, what have I done? The realization that he needs to take control again, and he picks our next devil who will create the third version of the ride. But that's already written. We're a little before 8 o'clock. Nobody showed up except one random person who made some weird comment that I couldn't even understand. But I'm going to end this here. And next week, I will do a better job of planning ahead and actually promoting this. But I will very likely just make this available for anyone to watch in the future. So if you're watching this and the replay, thank you. Leave a like, subscribe. I'm going to try and do this every Sunday evening from about 7 to 8 p.m. And as I get more comfortable with it, maybe a little more often. But feel free to leave comments and then press the bell so you get notified the next time I go live. I don't know. There's all this YouTube stuff that I'm not good at doing. But thank you for coming. Thank you for rewatching. And I'll see you all next week.